out, give it to us, and we may be able to get to it. My name is Seth Adams. I'm one of the co-chairs of Friends of Martinez, along with Mark Thompson here, our tech guy. And I hope you all know that we're live streaming on Facebook, we're on a Zoom meeting, and we're in person here. So anybody who's trying to manage the tech for an all-volunteer little grassroots organization deserves our great thanks. And this is a great turnout. Thank you all for coming. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Thousand Friends. Some of you may well know that we've been around for 8 years. We're not a nonprofit organization. We're a political action committee organized to vet and ask questions of and look for transparency in candidates for elected office so that we can improve Martinez's quality of life, environment, and government transparency. So those are our three branches of our stool. Good government, quality of life, which also means a lot of responding to development projects, and conservation, helping to encourage the protection of land. And we do that by working in electoral politics specifically, and most of our funds go to donations to candidates and communications and things like that. There's kind of a summary of our last year and our plans for the coming year up here on the front table. And there's also a QR code on the front of that because money does not grow on trees and democracy does not come cheap. So we hope that you think it's worth $5 a month to help defend and be a watchdog for Martinez. And if you do an active contribution, you can choose a recurring contribution or a single contribution. And really $5 a month is the difference between us being able to do this or not. So we started 8 years ago with our first set of endorsements for city council and some other things. And this is our 5th election cycle every 2 years. And we'll be working on city council races in the fall, but this, of course, is the March primary. And there are a bunch of things that are on the ballot right now, including a Measure C school measure. Helen Rossi, the superintendent for the Martinez Unified School District, is here in after the candidates forum. She'll update us on the Measure C proposal to extend the parcel tax there for O&M at the school district. Thank you very much for coming, Ellen. And the endorsement process. We're not nonpartisan. We're not unbiased. We have a point of view, but it's all about the betterment of Martinez, and it's not about anybody's profit except making Martinez a better place. So we have a point of view, and we can choose to endorse candidates after knowing them for some time, by going through an interview process with them, by having a candidates forum like this. We can do it in all kinds of different ways. The typical way that we do it is we send a questionnaire to the candidates, and we ask to have it sent back a week or 10 days before a forum or a set of in-person interviews. And that's kind of the basis for everybody being transparent and on the record, and us being able to ask them the same questions and compare apples and apples and oranges. And so that's what we'll be starting with in terms of asking questions tonight. We may choose to endorse a county supervisorial candidate after this evening, but this is also the March primary. There are 4 people who are running. It's very likely that there will be a runoff in November. So we could choose not to endorse in the primary and wait until November, but I doubt it. So that's one of the possibilities. But I think that we'll be deciding whether to endorse pretty quickly after tonight's meeting. Anybody have any questions? Okay. I want to thank Chanel Skellstressen, unless I get it mixed up every time. I want to thank Councilmember Preston Scales from Pittsburgh, Councilmember Jelani Killings from Pittsburgh, and Councilmember Mike Barbanica from Antioch for putting themselves out there and running for any elected official. It's a thankless job. And we know that the county has a lot of impact on our quality of life, everything from transportation to development to homelessness to police and safety and all those kinds of things, and it's a big job. This particular seat has been occupied for quite a while, and we hope that federal Glover will be very happy in his retirement. He's done a big job for almost 20 years. So we appreciate that, but this means it's a big opportunity in terms of someone new being elected to the Board of Supervisors, and so it's a really important race. It's also one in which Martinez plays a pretty important part, because we're a big center part of the district, and because Martinez residents tend to turn out in higher numbers than lots of other communities. We'll have a bigger effect on the primary than on the November election as a result of that. What we're going to do is we're going to give each candidate sequentially. So if the first question starts with Chanel, then the second question is going to start with Jelani, and so on. So they answer the questions in a shifting order. The same person doesn't always answer the same question first. We're going to give each candidate 2 minutes to introduce themselves and say whatever they want. We're going to ask a number of questions, pretty much the same questions for each candidate. And at the end, we're going to give them 2 minutes each for closing statements. We've got 2 timekeepers with a yellow card and a red card. Yellow means it's 45 seconds. Red means stop. And in the interest of time, we hope that the candidates will be succinct. Let's thank all the candidates for being here.
Thank you. As Seth Adams just shared, my name is Chanel Scales Preston. Born and raised in the city of Pittsburgh. I come from a working class background. Both of my parents were part of the union. My mother worked at Anchor Glass Container in Antioch for 33 years until it shut down. And my father was a laborer, labor union local 324 here in Martinez. I spent a lot of time home alone because my parents were working all the time and work shift work, and spent time in our local youth centers within the city of Pittsburgh, and which helped create my passion of youth now today. Spending time in those community centers really helped me a lot. Helped me to be able to want to go to college as well. Once I graduated from college, I had the opportunity to intern for Congressman George Miller at the time, so 22-year-old getting out of college and working for George. Had the opportunity to also work for Congressman Mark DeSonia. He was the county supervisor at the time. And then later I moved on to D.C., stayed there for about 2 years and came back to California. Once George retired, I transitioned over to Mark DeSonia's office, and I spent my time working in the community with local government, state, and other federal agencies, as well as being on council. What drove me to council was to do more in my community and give back. In particular, we didn't have any youth programs or youth center even open, and so that was one of my key points during that time was to open up the youth center. We have done so much over the past 5.5 years in the city of Pittsburgh, and it has really been a change. And I'm looking to bring the connections I have in the community, as well as the relationships I have built to bring services here in District 5. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jelani Killings. I'm excited to introduce myself to the Martinez community as a candidate for Contra Costa County Supervisor, District 5. Just a little bit about myself. I also grew up here in the district, raised in the city of Pittsburgh. And after graduating high school, I went off to college at Clark Atlanta University, earning my degree in business, and then coming back and getting right to work in the community, working with our local youth and doing college and career readiness programs, which ultimately led me to my first kind of endeavor in terms of public service getting engaged with what was going on with our local school board, understanding what the impacts it was having on our youth. And so in 2013, I went back and got my master's in public policy and management because I really wanted to make an impact on our local government agencies, our public organizations, and how they were spending dollars and ultimately the policy outcomes that we were seeing for our community. And so with that, that really led my path towards public service. I've been engaged. I've been an elected council member in the city of Pittsburgh since 2016. Really proud of the accomplishments we've been able to have in Pittsburgh. So whether we're looking at good governance, being able to include performance measurements for the work that we're doing, to be visible to the public, to be held accountable about our goals, our priorities, and ultimately the dollar that we're spending, and if they're actually seeing benefit to improving the quality of life. And so with that, I also have a keen focus on economic development. I was key in making sure that we authored our economic development strategic action plan, to making sure that we were having positive investments to support our local small businesses, also that we have proper planning and zoning, and then upscaling our economic development department to make sure that we can process business permits and those that were interested in doing business in the city of Pittsburgh. And then lastly, public safety is a big thing for me as well. I'm really proud about the accomplishments that we have, even when it comes to RENA. We really do it the best in the county, and I'm proud to say that when it comes to meeting our regional housing needs allocations. And then just the last bit, my past 10 years has been working for the Ethics Commission for the city of Oakland. So I'm all about good governance, transparency, and how we're holding ourselves accountable to the public.
My name is Mike Barbanica. I want to thank you for having me here tonight. A little bit about myself. I moved to Contra Costa County when I was 2 years old, so I've been here for 53 years in the county. I went to school here, I raised my family here, and I became a Pittsburgh police officer, originally starting with the city of Pittsburgh in 1985 as a police cadet. I was still in high school. I put myself through the Reserve Academy right here in Martinez, at Martinez Adult, while I was still in high school, because I knew that's what I wanted to do. I graduated, and when I became a proper age, I was able to get hired by the Pittsburgh Police Department. I worked my way through different divisions within the department, including as a traffic officer, a sexual assault investigator, a homicide detective, and also somebody who ran a street-level crimes unit. And our unit, I'm very proud to say, I was asked this on a podcast the other day, what are you most proud of being in the Pittsburgh Police Department? Well, first off, of being a police officer, I was most proud of giving back to the community. But secondly, running a team that helped lower our crime rate by 23.87%. That crime rate is still down today. We were out 7 days a week at times, working in narcotics areas, doing search warrants, doing buys undercover, and getting drug dealers, drug users, prostitution, those types of things off the street, making sure we had a safe community. I met my wife while I was working for the Pittsburgh Police Department. She was a temporary records clerk, and I walked in and said, that's who I'm going to marry. And we've been together 35 years. We have 3 children and 5 grandchildren. So for me, having a safe community with people in the community being able to go out and experience nightlife and not worry about crime, that's what's most important, one of the most important things to me. We'll talk more about that as the night goes on. Thank you for having me.
The first question I should have asked 1,000 Friends board members to stand up. We'll do that at the end. But Peggy Houston, Ben Stevens, and Seth Adams will be asking the questions. Take it away, Peggy.
All right. This is on?
You got it loud.
Okay. So the first question is going to be focused on the Martinez Refining Company. So a topic that's on the minds of lots of us here in Martinez. So the Martinez Refining Company has repeatedly released toxins in Martinez over the past 14 months. Healthy Martinez, a refinery accountability group, has voiced 5 demands, and those demands you're probably familiar with and are available online. What's your position on this issue? So again, Jelani, we'll start with you.
Yes, thank you for the question, and definitely this is something that is at the top of mind, not only for the community of Martinez, but everyone even within the region. So for me, it's really come back to accountability. I think what we're seeing right now, to a large extent, we've had regulators that have been asleep at the wheel. So if you're looking at the county or a lot of the agencies as well, in terms of making sure that the operations at the refinery are up to board and up to speed. I think the second thing is that we're looking at it from a safety aspect. So when we're looking at the refinery and their operations, are the employees properly trained, and also is the infrastructure intact in terms of what we're seeing with the flare-ups, right? So we know the process of it is a release in terms of some things that have to happen with the natural gas process, but when that release happens, they can either be scheduled or unscheduled, and what we're seeing is an unprecedented level of unscheduled flare-ups, and so we got to make sure that there's accountability with management at the refineries. Also, once again, with the regulatory agencies, making sure that they're doing their due diligence when it comes to going out there and having inspections. And then as we're talking about the infrastructure, we have to look at how we're upkeeping the infrastructure at our local refineries.
Mike?
Thank you. So I've attended not only Board of Supervisors meetings, but also Martinez City Council meetings, because I wanted to hear from the public what the public has to say. It's a concern to me that we've had 21 incidents since November of 21. I believe it's 21 incidents, 21 incidents. So I went out and sought out healthy Martinez, and met with the refinery as well. On my website, I've posted a plan and reached out to the refinery with the plan in a meeting saying, here is what I want. Flaring. When you have flaring, the public should know well in advance that you're going to have flaring and why you're having flaring. Training. The plant has seen a 50% turnover rate since it was purchased. I know I got to go quick. That has resulted in what we're seeing today. Commitment to lower emissions. The wet gas scrubber. There's a court case going on with that right now, and even if it doesn't happen, I want a commitment with the refineries that they will reduce to that amount, and my time is up.
Thank you. And I also had the opportunity to meet with PBF and Healthy Martinez, and I definitely share your frustrations. If this was happening in my community, I would be so livid to have something like this going on in my community, especially in some of the areas that we live in. I must say that I agree that things need to change. They just need to be better at being good neighbors. And there's something going on in the refinery, and I just need to stop. And whether that's training or other issues, we need to make sure we continue with the surprise inspections to make sure that that stops. I'm happy to see that this Friday they're allowing the community to go in to see how things are being worked on, and that provides transparency. But we need to continue to make sure we're moving forward with transparency and making sure they're working with the community at every step of the way.
I'm sorry. The next one's going to be Mike. The question's coming from Lynn Stevens.
So, land use visions for District 5. The Northern Waterfront, the current District 5 supervisors have promoted the Northern Waterfront Economic Development Initiative to reserve areas for economic development and create jobs. How would you support economic development?
So I'm all for economic development and I'm all for job creation. However, we only have one environment here. We have to do this. If we're going to have growth, it has to be smart growth. We have to work with groups that are like Save Mount Diablo, those types of groups that have that. They're not developers. They're looking at saving our open spaces. If we're going to grow this area and develop jobs, I'm all for that. I understand that. But it's got to be done smartly. We have to understand that when we start tearing our environment up, our hills up, our trails up, our parks up, our waterfront up, that has to be done in a manner that is going to be sustainable, and we don't look back in the future and say, what did we do here? What did we do to our own community? Again, this has been on the forefront for quite some time. We need to work with not only environmental groups, but also developers to see what can we do to work together to come to an agreement as to how we want to develop this, and the community should have a big input.
Chanel.
Thank you. So the Northern Waterfront, as I share all the time, is really the fabric of our community when we think of industry. And as we see that industry is changing in all of our communities, it's important that we look at industry, clean, green industry. How do we bring jobs there so that we can continue to grow and provide opportunity for people in our community? And work with our environmentalists to make sure that it's safe for everyone throughout District 5. So for me, when looking at that area, we know that we have a transition. And so with that just transition, we really have to work hard with the workers to make sure that they're ready when those jobs come, and they can continue to have a living wage working in these communities.
Yeah, what a tremendous asset that we have in District 5 and having the Northern Waterfront. And so for me, this is a big vision, but we've had a lack of really leadership when it comes to bringing it to fruition. So when we talk about economic development, it takes a lot of money to remediate old industrial sites. And so we need the county to put some skin in the game. Cities like Pittsburgh, we've launched on the path of creating what are called enhanced infrastructure financing districts. There's a lot of infrastructure needed that we have on the waterfront, and we need the county to participate with cities on the northern waterfront when they're creating these EIFDs to get the capital we need to clean up and then also to have the right infrastructure. Two is that it can't just be looking at industrial and even just job centers, right? We need that absolutely, but what an amenity to have for residents in the area. Let's open it up, more recreational opportunities. We have the Dow Wetlands in Pittsburgh as an educational opportunity for our youth. I would like to see that expand, commercial opportunities. When you look out to the west and you look at Hercules, what they're doing at Bayfront, there's so much opportunity on our waterfront, and we just need the right long-term planning and the leadership to bring it to fruition.
The third question we'll start with Chanel, Delani, and then Mike. I'd like to know how you're going to emphasize open government and transparency, and what's your record on that?
So transparency is a huge deal, and it's something that we talk about on our council, and then we lead in that direction with everything that we do. Making sure that the county level is important, that with our budget that we're being transparent with the community and engaging the community so that they're part of the process, that they're understanding what's going on. I think this should happen in all the departments, to be getting community input. As people are becoming more and more engaged, it's important that we are doing things that matter to them most in their communities. And all of our communities are different, but we want to look at that with an eye towards equity. So for me, keeping Zoom at the County Board of Supervisors meetings is very important, so that people who cannot show up can make sure they show up via Zoom or call in to share their remarks.
Donnie?
Yeah, so good governance transparency is the life that I live in both my professional work and as a council member. So in my work in terms of council member in the city of Pittsburgh, I led the efforts in terms of transparency and open government. So before I came, our subcommittee meetings were pretty much behind closed doors. Nobody knew about what happened at subcommittee. They were hardly reported out by council members. And so I made a push to make sure that they were video recorded and then also put on our website, because the public deserves to know what's happening in these policy discussions and making sure that they're open and transparent. Secondly, is that I helped create, through our government performance subcommittee, to push forward creating performance measurements and outcomes for all of our city council goals and priorities. So what does that mean? That residents can now see a public dashboard when we create goals. They can see the metrics that we're doing to reach those goals, but also the progress that's being made on them. The last thing that I would say in terms of bringing to the County Board of Supervisors, we need open government data. There's so much data that the county collects. We need to make sure that the press, that civic technologists, community-based organizations can access that data, do their own data analysis to make sure that we're having better outcomes for the dollars that we're spending.
So here's where I differ quite a bit from most elected officials that are out there. I'm in my district every day. If I'm in town, I'm in my district. But I'm already starting that with District 5. I'm in my district back in the city of Antioch on a regular basis. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll see videos out there as late as 2 o'clock in the morning where I'm checking on encampment areas or areas that we've had complaints of narcotics being dealt or whatever the case. So I'm in this district, thank you, I'm in this district every day. That is going to be the same as a county supervisor. I've always had an open door policy, and I always will have an open door policy. When people call me, I recommend don't call my office to my private business. Call my phone, and I'll set up a time to meet with you and sit down and meet. Obviously, schedules and so on and so forth sometimes get in the way of your schedule, my schedule, but my goal, when somebody wants to meet with me, somebody wants to talk with me, my goal is to be there for them.
I don't know if my voice was scratchy, but the candidates were too. I don't know if Chanel's got the. Okay, the next question is going to come from Peggy. It's going to be Jelani, then Mike, and then Chanel.
Is this working? Yeah, it is. All right, so this Thousand Friends opposes new residential development north of the waterfront railroad tracks. What steps should the county be taking to prepare for sea level rise?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So as we're looking at in terms of future development, I think sustainability is always the key eye for development. So I think as you're doing the CEQA analysis, as we're looking at planning for long-term planning along even the waterfront, it's important to make sure that we're looking at the adequate levels when it comes to sea level rise, as we're looking at the delta, up the Garquines as well. And so I know it's not an exact science in terms of knowing exactly what that rise will be, but I think proper planning when you're seeing some of the storms that we've had recently and seeing some of the communities that have had flooding is properly preparing with the infrastructure, so making sure that we're having the green infrastructure for how the water flows, so the pervious pavement, and also making sure that we have adequate outflow in terms of where that sewer system can drain to as well. So infrastructure is big for me when it comes to planning, and then also when we're talking about where we can plan and zone along the waterfront, making sure that there's enough space or buffer that we're not here having any issues when it comes to potential flooding.
I'm sorry if I'm speaking fast, we only have 1 minute. So when it comes down to it, those areas there, residential areas going into areas that are prone to flooding on our waterfront, why are we developing that? Why are we considering that? Those areas could be reserved for recreation. There's other things we can develop. We don't have to develop housing in that area. If we are going to develop housing, we need to get smart and listen to people that have more knowledge in this area than we do. Am I somebody who truly understands all of it? I don't think any of us are. It's not what we do for a living, but we should be surrounding ourselves with people that do understand that and listen to what they have to say. Again, development in that area should be focused on recreational type development or preservation, keeping the beauty of that. We only have one waterfront. We should not be taking that waterfront and squandering it away. That's my position on it. It's always been my position on it, and it'll remain. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would support the efforts that's going on at the county level, and then figure out how do we coordinate those efforts as well. I think it's important that, you know, when we're looking at different areas in our community, that we're working with community partners. So if that's our environmentalist partners, if that's the city council and what their housing element looks like, and then how do we partner with that to make sure that we're keeping, you know, open space to our residents so that it's being accessible. You know, there's a lot of areas here that needs work, and so I want to make sure that I'm not making decisions, especially coming out of another city, for another city. I want to make sure that I'm sitting down, listening, and talking about the needs and wants in the community.
The next question is going to come from Lynn, and it's going to be Mike, followed by Chanel and Delani.
So I guess most of you know that the 297-acre Alhambra Highlands property was one that the community here voted for to designate as to make designated open space and reserved for us to enjoy for years to come. With that said, how would you, what are your open space priorities for District 5 and how would you implement them?
So, with open spaces, I absolutely support them, and I have a history of doing this. If you look back at my voting record, when it came time for the ranch project in East County, I sat down with a representative from Save Mount Diablo. We went to the property, we walked it for hours, and then I met with the builder. We ended up meeting for hours as well. Open space is a huge priority for me, and I was not going to move forward with the project unless we did preserve the right amount of open spaces. There's another project in West Hartley that I have not been in support of. And when their attorney showed up to our meeting and tried to get me to vote to block the project or add to the project that had already been negotiated with the environmentalists, I said no to that in an open meeting. I've always stood by keeping our open spaces when we can. We need smart growth. I'm not anti-growth. I am pro-smart growth and working with the environmentalists.
No.
So through my time working for the federal government, I've been able to work on issues of open space and being able to work with East Bay Regional Park District, the National Park Service, and other agencies to be able to connect land together. So even here in the city of Martinez, we were able to do the same thing through legislation in 2017, how we were able to connect that land and it was donated over to John Muir Trust. I support open space and I will continue to do that. I think what's a difference for me is being able to work with those partners to connect the dots, to provide additional funding to preserve that land.
Yes, thank you. I think the importance of this question is dealing with local control. So we all want to be able to have a say-so when it comes to how land is developed in our communities, and that's why we have general plans. That's why even ultimately we have voters decide in terms of keeping and valuing certain open space and preservation. And so for me at the county level, when we look at the county and the cities that are within it, really zoning decisions are made by the incorporated cities, right? So we're really looking at unincorporated areas and then overall looking at policies that can help the preservation or really the expansion of open space opportunities. In Pittsburgh, we have one of the highest per capita parks than any city in the county. And so we always lean towards that because we know open space improves quality of life. It gives people more recreational opportunities. So when we have the opportunity to do that, we go for it and we can properly plan for more open space recreation opportunities. But it is a balance because you have to look at not only property rights, but you also have to look at in terms of what's best for the community when it comes to growth and development.
Okay, I'm going to do the next question. It's going to be Chanel, followed by Jelani, followed by Mike. And let's be honest, Martinez has a long history of open space preservation and protecting its ridgelines. And Pittsburgh has a long history of being pro-development, including most of its residential development being built by the Cino companies, Discovery Builders. So you have both, Jelani and Chanel, voted for the Faria project twice. While I understand the difference between cities being in control of things within their city limits, you're running for County Supervisor, and this is unincorporated land that we're talking about. It doesn't have to be added to Pittsburgh. It might just stay in the county. So explain your position on the Faria project, and the basic question is, what's your position on ridgeline development?
So in terms of the Faria project, I supported the Faria project in the city of Pittsburgh because it was bringing a different type of housing in our community that we didn't have. And so, you know, this project has been going on for over 20 years where it's been back and forth. And the voters voted back in 2005 to support housing being built in that area. But even with that, me coming on council and learning and understanding, I was looking at things based on what's going on in our community and what this project, how it would benefit some of the people in our community. And when I think about how the area has been redlined around us and people not being able to purchase homes in different areas, and think about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh deserves to have nice housing in their community. And that's something that we haven't had. We have been the ones that have been not able to purchase homes in these areas. And so for the first time, you know, when you hear someone says on the other side of the hill, well, we don't want to see your houses from the other side of the hill. And we don't want you to build those houses there. But it's almost like, well, Pittsburgh doesn't deserve to have nice things too, like other communities. So what I focused on was making sure that project was much smaller. So it is more open space. I believe it's about 47% more open space than what the original plan was. It's less housing that was cut in half. And so for me, making sure that it was down in the valley, not on the ridge line, to preserve the ridge line so that you can still keep those views, and the people from the other side of the hill will still be able to enjoy the hills with the homes being down in the valley. And I must say, because of Save Mount Diablo and groups like you, you've been able to fight this whole time over 20 years to make sure that we today made a better decision than what was made years ago. So I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. I think ultimately starting at the free decision. So it's already been shared in 2005, the voters of Pittsburgh voted for Measure P in order to designate the very land that we're discussing right now, zone for residential development. That was the voters of our city who were looking at long-term planning for development and growth in our community. So that was a local decision made by voters. When we look at the 20 years or approximately 20 years that expanded from then, we see a drastically smaller footprint because of negotiations that took place. So the East County Habitat Conservancy, they negotiated with the developer for over literally almost 20 years to create a buffer zone off of the ridgeline, to create a wildlife corridor, to make sure that the footprint was smaller in the valley instead of being up on the ridgeline. So these are things that were negotiated and that ultimately we approved as a council for a number of reasons in terms of benefit to our community, even connection to the future Thurgood Marshall East Bay Regional Park, that without the development, we'd have no access from the side of Pittsburgh. And so when it comes to a county level, I'm always looking at local control, and then also when it comes to ridgeline development, where we can protect, absolutely.
So with what I'm about to say, keep in mind that we're all three friends up here, we're all three colleagues, but it's absolutely ridiculous to say that local control will control destroying a ridge line in our county. We have one ridge line as you come over Highway 4 for those hills. Once it's gone, it's gone. We have one river. Once it's gone, or the riverfront, waterfront is gone, it's gone. What's next? So Save Mount Diablo asked, and again, I'm saying this with respect, but Save Mount Diablo asked for 45 days to continue to negotiate with the Sino Company about moving the homes off of the ridgeline. They were declined at 45 days. We have one environment. I'm not anti-growth. I'm not anti-building. But if we're saying that the local control trumps everything else, number one, the property is not in the city of Pittsburgh at this time, not all of it. And number two, you have to be good stewards of the land that we have and the environment that we have. So to say that, well, it's local, it's our decision, we can do what we want, what about the rest of the county? Once that ridge line is gone, you will never get it back.
Can I just chime in, because I don't like semantics. And so the reality of it is that it was a local control decision because in our general plan, that area is within our sphere of influence. So then it was brought up about 45 days. Anybody in here knows when you have environmental processes, they last way beyond 45 days. But we're also talking about 20 years worth of negotiations. So it's really, such a twist to try to act like 45 days we weren't allowing negotiations to happen. And so then on top of that, when we talk about development, look at the Bay Area, please, all of us. Look at the beautiful development that's happened in Berkeley, in Rodeo, in Hercules, in Crockett, in Martinez. And once again, the first time that Pittsburgh has developed in the hills, everybody's up in arms. So I think it's okay to say that we voted for a project that is going to benefit our community. and the ridge line will be intact, and it hasn't even happened yet, and folks are saying the ridge line is destroyed. And so I think that is really not credible at all, but we want to make sure that we're just putting out facts in terms of the actual project and the development that is going to occur there.
Actually, let's close it down. We've heard enough about the Ridgeline project, and let's move on to question 7.
And this is starting with Jelani. What are the county's most important budget issues?
So for me, it really starts with, in terms of looking at the expenditures, they're growing at a clip that is larger than the revenues that are coming in. So I think as we're looking at foresight, the reality is that we're looking at a state deficit, a budget deficit of $68 million. I know the governor's trying to spend it and say that it's half of that, but that's going to directly impact county services and programs and dollars that we receive. And so we're going to have to find areas to scale back in terms of new programs that are being identified and new initiatives and new projects. We're going to have to make sure that we don't have ongoing expenditures for very limited revenue. So I think that would be the first thing. When we're looking at budget, we're also looking at terms of impact. So I talked about performance measurements before. So when we're looking at how we're expending tax dollars, specifically look at homelessness. $172 million over the last 4 years. Where's the accountability for that? Over that same clip, we've seen homelessness grow 4% in the county. So how much is enough? Or are we utilizing the right strategies? And I think that when we're looking at the budget, we have to look at real auditing over the programs and services that we have, and then also making sure that we're not putting limited tax dollars towards ongoing expenditures that we know are not going to be sustainable.
So my view on this is homelessness and health and safety. So we've spent, and I have a mailer that went out on this today, $172 million in the last 4 years that we have spent as a county on our homeless situation. If you look at Delta Landing in Pittsburgh, is that a success? It's run by the county, administered by the county. Now they have vendors in there that are running the wraparound services, but is that a success? $21.5 million of state money was used to purchase that facility, and then the county came in and ran the facility. I received a phone call from county housing and was asked, will you participate privately in your private company with helping place people out of this hotel? In 3 years, you know how many people that we placed out of that hotel? None. 0. And so, and it's not from a lack of trying. I actually sat with the local priest and said, watch this. And we called over there and said, we have 12 houses available right now. Can you place people? And we were told no. There's nobody to place. Not saying the place isn't full, but no, the answer was no. I want an audit of that $172 million.
Chanel.
So when we look at the budget, I think we have to make sure we're looking at all departments and making sure that we are auditing things in that way. When we're talking about, and I just have to circle back on this just because it's in Pittsburgh, Delta Landing, and looking at homelessness, we're taking people all throughout our community in Pittsburgh and housing them at Delta Landing. People are being placed at Delta Landing as transitional housing. Last year, when you look at the homeless count that was done in Contra Costa County, in the city of Pittsburgh, our homeless count was cut in half. And that's because of Delta Landing. That was because of Veterans Square that we built within the city, where veterans were able to be housed, over 35 units. And this is important to have some type of transitional housing, but it's important to have wraparound services as well, so that when they are transitioning, we can be a support system to keep them in their housing when they move on.
Thank you. That was our 7th question. Lynn is going to ask the next question, but after one more question by Lynn and one by me, we're going to go to audience questions. If you would like to pick up a card and ask a burning question that's come to you during the meeting, this is your chance. If anybody has cards, bring them to the corner of the table here. And question number 8, Lynn.
So, each of you, I would like you to each list 3 most important conservation, quality of life, and good government issues in Martinez and District 5 and your position on them.
And I want to make sure I read that right. Just the three that you want listed.
So it's conservation, quality of life,
Okay.
and good government.
Okay, so good government obviously is transparency and being good stewards of your money. This is your money at a county level. No matter where the money comes from, ultimately it's tax money. As far as dealing with homelessness, that is something that has to be tackled because we're losing the battle countywide on homelessness. We're losing the battle on garbage being dumped. In the city of Antioch, I doubled the size of code enforcement. They told me when I took office there was no way, maybe you'll get 1 or 2 more code enforcement officers. We've doubled the size of it. What could that do at a county level if we took that to a county level? This is your money, again, that you should know. And as far as good governance, transparency. You should know. When I get into office, first thing I'm going to do is start auditing where this money has gone and then publish whatever information legally I can. Why? Because we need transparency in the form of good governance, transparency.
Should be Chanel.
And can you give me the 3 again?
Conservation, quality of life, and good government issues.
So I know we all talk about good governance a lot. And for me, it's about being a person that's on the ground, that's listening, that's in the community, and that's what I do. I make sure I'm present, I show up, I listen, and then I bring it back and see what we can do to make that happen. And I will continue to do that. And then as for conservation, and what was the third one?
Good government.
I got good government down.
Quality of life.
Quality of life. It's important, to ensure that, as I shared earlier, that we're creating parks, and we do that a lot within our community. We're creating open space, and where we are out there and being able to have a community that you love and enjoy. I'm big on having entertainment in our community, making sure there's things for people to do so that they don't have to travel to other communities, and those things are right there at home. And so those are things that I will continue to focus on throughout District 5.
Yeah, so definitely continuing the focus of good governance. We can really look at fiscal responsibility, really good stewardship of taxpayer dollars. I think we all see the rising cost of living here in California, and we're constantly asked pretty much every election to give up some more money, and in reality, we're receiving less for what we're putting in. And so it really looks at the fiscal responsibility, the stewardship of the limited dollars that we have, making sure that we're keeping up with maintenance, making sure that we're keeping up with the county infrastructure that we have. So I look around a lot of communities, especially our unincorporated communities. I see a lot of light, a lot of road repairs that are needed. And those are core functions that we should be taking care of. And then as well, looking at service delivery. So we really need to look at that model of having service hubs in each region of the county and making sure that people have access to that. When it comes to quality of life, we really need to look at how decriminalization laws are impacting our local communities. So whether we're talking about retail theft, whether we're talking about decriminalization of certain drug possession and what we're seeing with the issues of mental health and substance use, we need to address that right now because it's having a real impact on our quality of life.
This is the last one for, that was the last answer on that question. Question number 9, we're transitioning over into, I'm sorry to shut down, you answered that. We're transitioning into the, did we skip you, Mike? No. Okay. Yeah. That's nobody has the first answer or the last answer. We're transitioning into audience questions, and The first one is, and we'll start with Jelani, Mike, and then Chanel. Have you taken any donation money from the Martinez refinery? I'll widen that out to refineries in general, and add in who your top 3 donors to your campaign are. So Martinez refinery, refineries in general, and who are your top 3 donors, starting with Jelani?
Yeah, so I have not taken any money from the Martinez refinery, no money from any refineries. All of my contributions, when you ask for top donors, they're local family, friends, and supporters. I've received no money from PACs. I've received no money from large organizations. This is really grassroots. This is really family, friends, and those that have seen my track record and my work in the city of Pittsburgh over the last 8 years. I'm proud of that, of earning every vote, not beholden to any special interest. And with that, I'm the only candidate in this race that can truly say that I don't have a bunch of PAC money pouring into my campaign, but I'm standing on my principles, I'm standing on my track record, and really getting out to all of you, the voters, to where you can see the difference between the candidates, where we stand on the issues and how we speak to them.
Mike?
So, the Martinez refinery, no, I have not. I have met with them and spoke to them about the issues going on there, but I have not taken any money. Contra Costa Deputy Sheriff's Association have been probably my largest supporter. A gentleman named Brian Benton, who's a private citizen who owns a restaurant in East County. Jonathan Black, who is a real estate attorney, and PORAC, which is supports police officers in training statewide, and those are my top donors.
And,
Yes, so I have not taken any money from PBF. I have not taken any money from any refinery or fossil fuel company at all. Over 200 of my donations are individual donors, and they're under $500. I have received money from labor, and from working families and communities, and, you know, people who have been supporting me for over the last, 22 years that I have been a representative, and so that has been community-led.
we've got 2 more questions. Some of the ones that were given to us have already been asked in some form. We've got 2 more questions, and then we're going to have a 2-minute closing from each of them. Thank you.
So Mike starting this one? Yeah. The question for all 3, what can be done to help unincorporated county towns, specifically Rodeo, which lost Safeway and is filling with blight?
So, touching back on what I spoke of just a little while ago, in Antioch, we were experiencing a very similar thing. We had a lot of garbage on the street. We would drive down the street, and it was very disheartening, especially growing up in that community. One of the things that we did is, as the representative, I was in my district every day. I went out and I met with absentee owners. There's a very large company that no council prior to and no representative in that area had would not, I don't want to say had the guts, but there was a 6-figure fine for them allowing this garbage piled up around the business. The city came to me and said, "It's your district, what do you want to do?" I said, "Send them a fine." It was over $100,000. When we start fining businesses for doing this, and then businesses for sitting vacant and allowing encampments and allowing the garbage to pile up, you'll see how fast it turns around.
So that was Chanel and July.
So our unincorporated communities, they need attention. And I can say I've been out into each of those communities, and I would be on the ground to figure out what the needs are. If it's public safety, I would make sure that they have increased public safety in their communities. If it's a cleanup, I will be out there helping organize those cleanups, working with our businesses, making sure that those businesses are getting what they need as well. Because it's important that we're protecting our communities, and if we need to look at different rules around enforcement, I would ensure that we would create that enforcement within that community as well.
Yeah, I think when it comes to our unincorporated areas, this is one of the really important areas for county board of supervisors. They don't have direct representation like we have with mayors and city councils and city managers. So they really depend on their county board of supervisors being that district representatives. And so the reality is that we need representatives as a board of supervisor to be present in the community. When you're looking at communities like Rodeo, it's simply looking at Parker Avenue. The local businesses are saying, hey, if we could just get some cleanup, some beautification, maybe some facade improvements to help us with what we're doing as far as economic development, creating a pathway to what they're trying to do to revitalize their waterfront at their pier and bringing folks to the community. I think another area that we're looking at with unincorporated areas is that they want simple street improvements. You go to Crockett, you go to Rodeo, you see the pavement index and the management that has been there. It's been a lack and there's been neglect, and we need to address that as board of supervisors. Lastly is that when everything is settled with the Rodeo Renewed project and they have those community benefit agreements that are in place, we need to make sure those dollars are going specifically to impact the community of Rodeo and not being spread out around the county and being used as a slush fund like we see with a lot of other mitigation funds currently held and managed by our current supervisor.
The next question is going to be by Lynn,
I think Chanel started.
Chanel, Jelani, Mike.
So do any of you or support or do not support having an independent auditor for the sheriff's department?
I'm short. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I think every agency that we have in local government needs oversight. And so when we're looking at independent, I think that we've seen that even as a model for us in the city of Pittsburgh. We receive quarterly reports in the public for all use of force and internal investigations. And on top of that, we make sure that internal investigations aren't done internally, but that you have a third party doing those internal investigations. That could be a topic of conversation as well. But once again, the transparency is that we have those publicly reported to us at a public open meeting as a city council to have that discussion with the public. And if we need tighter measurements to be put in place, we can hold ourselves accountable to that. But yes, I do support it.
And Mike?
Yes, and as with all county offices, but let me go back to the time that I was in Pittsburgh. I was an administrator there. We used to handle our internal investigations inside the department. And I supported us starting to wean off of that and get away from that. Why? Because you really shouldn't have, for serious investigations, you should not have an agency investigating themselves for serious. Now, I'm not talking about somebody walking into briefing 2 minutes late. I'm not talking about hiring a company to come in and investigate that officer. I'm talking about serious allegations. Absolutely, those should be done externally, and then that report provided as an independent investigation to the administration. And when need be, there are times when the city council may get some information on those types of things, or county board of supervisors may get some, but absolutely.
This is a shot in the dark because I don't know anything about it. But an audience member wondered in the vein of trying to get every question answered. Are you aware of the field semester project in Fort Costa and have any opinion on that project? And that would be Jelani, Mike, Chanel.
No, I'm not aware of the project.
Neither are we, but here we go.
I am aware of the project. I actually went out and met with the community in Port Costa, and it's interesting. You have, oh my goodness, what's the name? Head Royce School out in Oakland area is looking at creating a different type of program in Port Costa, where it's having about 45 students there to be like a boarding school. And they would spend 9 weeks at the boarding school there. What's interesting is that the town is so small. how will it be able to, with this infrastructure, how will it be able to take on 45 students on top of the teachers that's coming in? And thank you.
I think we got an answer. Do you have any more information to add, Mike? I do not. Okay.
So that, can I just say, it just needs to be transparency there. So for no one to know about it, and that is, I think that part was very interesting for me to learn about, and why they're deciding to come there. So evidently, it has been through the Board of Supervisors, but it just seems like there's not enough transparency in the community or engagement at this time.
Well, that's what we try to do by helping to educate the public. And we reached the end of the questions. We'll have our board members stand up at the end of the closing statements by the candidates. And I forget who started last time. Was it Jelani, Mike? Chanel?
Jelani.
Was it Jelani? So the
No,
next.
I'm sorry, Chanel started this one.
Chanel.
She's-
So it'll be, we'll be doing closing statements, Jelani, Mike, and then Chanel. And you've got 2 minutes.
Just want to say thank you to the 1,000 Friends of Martinez and all the community members that came out. It's really my passion in terms of public service and being able to talk through these issues that are impacting our community. And so I'm here, I have a young family, I'm married with 2 children, and I'm looking at the legacy and what's going to be here for them as they grow up. I think that we have a unique opportunity. I think that I bring a new, fresh perspective to the Board of Supervisors as we see the workforce that's getting ready to come up and inherit a lot of sometimes often bad decisions that have been made over the past 40 years. It's our millennials and our Gen Z that's coming up that's going to inherit that, and I represent that generation. I'm a millennial, and I believe that we need a fresh perspective on the Board of Supervisors that's looking at the quality of life, that's looking at affordability. As a young person that wants to own a home here in Contra Costa County, are we making it more difficult for families like myself, or are we opening it up to where we all can be able to inherit and be able to have something that we're proud of? And so going back to really my focus for County Board of Supervisors, it's really 3 key areas. We're looking at good governance. We want to make sure that we're held accountable for the dollars that we're spending. We heard a lot today about the amount of money that we're spending as a county, but we're not seeing the results for it. We have Proposition 1 that's going to be coming up on the ballot soon here in March at the same time that you'll be voting for this race. That has real implications, whichever way that it goes, that will impact our county. If passed, that is actually less money that we're going to have at the county level to provide services for mental health and substance use. So looking at this onslaught in terms of state funding that's being reduced for vital county services, we need to make sure that we have strong fiscal leadership at the county level, and I believe that my track record shows that, and I'll bring that as well. And then also we want to make sure public safety and economic development are at the top and at the forefront, keeping our community safe, holding our district attorney accountable. If we're putting in diversion programs, let's make sure that it's actually having a positive impact and we're not having a revolving door in our community of crime and theft.
Thank you.
So thank you for having me tonight. Thank you for having all of us here tonight. We very much appreciate it. We've been together on other things where we've been able to speak. My priority is, I've got 4 priorities that I'm working. Homelessness, public safety, preserving our parks and open spaces, and the blight that we see in our communities. And some of these a lot of them run hand in hand. Homelessness, let's talk about that for a second. My wife and I started putting together a program in our private company since 2007. We have housed so many people that right now in our program, working with HUD, the VA, Brilliant Corners, Hamilton Families. There's 7 different organizations we work with. We have 569 people housed right now that are in homes, and that's being subsidized in some way, not by the county. The money is coming from elsewhere. So we're getting those people off the streets. We can do that on a larger scale at a county level. Public safety, I'm the only one running who spent 21 years behind the wheel of a patrol car, been out doing drug raids, buying drugs undercover, working street-level narcotics, working as a detective. I understand public safety and what it means to keep the public safe. Preserving the parks, I have a history, parks and open spaces, of voting that way. And then the blight in the community. I've doubled the size of code enforcement, and I'm out in my community every single day. I will be making sure that we do the same thing in District 5, that we have a focus on keeping that community clean and a place we can all be proud of. So I appreciate your consideration, and I hope for your vote in March. Thank you.
One thing I like to just always share is that for me, public service is what drives me each and every day. I love my community. I enjoy the communities that I spend time in. I enjoy being on the ground talking to people and getting to know them and understanding their needs and wants. Spending my time in the Congressman's office, I'm able to help people with federal issues, whether it's with the VA, they're about to lose their home and I'm helping them save their home before it goes into foreclosure. Perhaps it's with Social Security or student loans, or even someone getting their family member here and focusing on immigration. As a council member, I have prioritized our youth services within our community. But I also have strengthened our public safety department by serving on the public safety subcommittee. I put in place ordinances so that when we have sideshows or people doing donuts in our community, they get fined. And our police officers right now, people are sharing videos with them throughout the community where they're going to other cities to pull in their car and tow it and fine them. And I'm proud of that. I have been able to work on making sure that we don't have guns in our community. We had a gun buyback program. Or spending time with our youth at Black Diamond Mines with our police officers to build a bridge and have our students feel comfortable. And those are things that I will continue to do. I will listen to the community. I will listen to the wants and needs. I want to be helpful and be a voice and be present. And I think that's really important. And each community is different. I love that Martinez had this open space and creeks and parks. And then other parts of the community is different where they need to focus more on transportation issues. So please, March 5th is just a couple of weeks away. I am requesting for your support and vote. I'm here, I'll stay around and talk. I'll give you my card and my phone number. I'm looking forward to being your next county supervisor. Thank you.
Can we thank all three candidates? All three of these council members were serving their communities during the COVID pandemic, as were some of our council members here in the office. Senator Jay and Brianne, I think, were here. That was thankless. that was difficult. That was going through a lot of things nobody had ever done before, and making it up as they went along. And so they deserve special thanks for service during that period, and for putting themselves out in front of the public, running for office, having people throw slings at them, and so on. I would like the board members of Thousand Friends of Martinez to stand up. Our steering committee is 11 or 12 people, some of whom are here tonight. I'd really like to thank Mark Thompson, co-chair, and Pete Sabine for managing tech, the Facebook live stream, and the Zoom. How many people do we have on Zoom? 28. So we had about 100 people for the forum tonight. We'll also be sending it out in our e-blast. The flip side is sometimes it looks like we know what we're doing, or we're well organized, and we're really bare bones, working with a narrow bandwidth. And some of us are aging out. So we would like to bring in new blood. And so if you've got an interest in politics, conservation, good governance, we're doing a lot of interesting things. And it's a working board of directors. So talk to one of us, call the phone number, or contact us by email. And of course, please donate to Thousand Friends on a recurring basis through Act Blue. We're going to bring Helen Rossi, the superintendent of the Martinez Unified School District, up here to talk about Measure C. And then we're going to have a free-for-all where you're all going to eat the rest of that food back there and talk to the candidates. Helen, come up here. That mic is a better one. You guys want to mingle, stand up, go to the
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Helen Rossi from the Martinez Unified School District. I also live here in Martinez, and actually last Wednesday I celebrated my 30th anniversary working for the district. Almost. So first of all, I want to thank the Martinez community for supporting the parcel tax that we have in place since 2008. In 2008, the school funding was decreased tremendously. The economy was went a little bit south, and we didn't have the money that we should have had to support the programs for all of our schools. So at the time, the superintendent, Ronnie Youth, decided to work with the board and put over a parcel tax, which this community embraced and supported. The parcel tax has been supporting music, art, counseling, and library services for the district for the past, about 16 years or so. The parcel tax is not in perpetuity. Every 5 years we have to go back and renew. So we are asking the community to once again renew the parcel tax at the same exact rate of flat rate of $75 a parcel. And this time for 8 years, because it will save me a little bit of paperwork if I'm still hanging around in 8 years. I've been doing this a while. But basically, if the money cannot be spent on anything that's not listed, we have never wavered in what we've spent it. I was the CEO for 5 or 6 years, so I made sure that every dollar went to only what we have. We have what we're supposed to. The Citizens Oversight Committee checks in twice a year and makes sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. And it brings in somewhere between, I'd say, $780,000 and $850,000, depending on how many exemptions we get. Because if you are 65 and older, you are allowed to file a waiver. You come to the district office and you bring your tax paper and your license, and we give you a waiver. It has to be done before the 15th of July, and then that will last until your property sells, as long as you are the owner of that property and remain over 65. So what I'm asking tonight is for support for our schools in the form of the renewal of Measure C on our parcel in the March election. I'm sorry, I'm going on my 15th hour and I haven't been home yet. So thank you all, and great program tonight. So.
Does anybody have questions about Measure C? So thank you. Helen will be looking at the endorsement as well. There's one other thing if you're a Martinez resident. You may not have known her, but most of us did. Barbara Woodburn was an environmentalist, a councilwoman, a planning commissioner, and we're trying to name the canyon above the high school after her. It's unnamed. She helped save the Franklin Ridge there in the Franklin Hills, stopping development and then creating Carquinez Strait Regional Shoreline. And we're about 30 signatures short of the city's required number to get that. So you need to be a Martinez resident and over 18, and if you've already signed it, don't sign again. You need 30 signatures. Secondly, by a show of hands, please tell the 3 city council members here that you would like the F Street Canyon named for Barbara Woodburn as soon as they can consider it. And that's why. That's what we call a strong arm. Please mingle, talk with the board member.